Okay, we are right now on the phone with Foster Gamble, and Kimberly is his wife is also with him, and we're going to be talking about the documentary, the film that he just released the 11th of November, which is Thrive, and I guess most of you already know about it. So first of all, I want to welcome you, Foster. You can hear me well?
I can hear you well, Gloria. Thank you. And I need to let you know, I thought that you've been informed already that unfortunately Kimberly, due to a family health emergency, is unable to join us today.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that, but I guess we can manage with you all what we're gonna talk about today. Thank you so much. First of all, then I want to congratulate you for the film. It's an amazing work, and I know it's caused a lot of good comments and people that are complaining about being charged for the film. So I want to start asking you, how long have you been researching and investigating to bring us Thrive?
Well, I've really been researching my entire life. When I graduated from college, I dedicated myself to finding out what in the world was going on that was causing us being at the risk of a nuclear holocaust and destroying the environment, and just the tremendous suffering in wars and so forth in the world. And then I was at the same time following this path that I talk about in the movie, where I had this inner sense. I had a vision when I was 14 of this fundamental energy pattern, and really became quite passionate about finding out, is there in fact this fundamental energy pattern in the universe? And I have been studying that my entire life, and finally these two paths came together in the late 1990s, and I met with a group of scientists, and we confirmed that the two fundamental patterns that I had come across, we confirmed them as fundamental at every visible level of our reality. And then finally, in this think tank called the Sequoia Symposium, it finally became clear how the two patterns fit together as one. And then on the other side of looking at how are we going to get out of this lethal predicament that we put ourselves in as the species, that finally started to become clearer to me also, particularly as I followed the money upstream to see, who's actually causing all of this suffering, and found out a lot about what the agenda is, what the structure is, and how we can turn that around. So once that became sufficiently coherent to me, that's when my wife Kimberly and I decided to make the movie, and that was 8 years ago. So the film itself has been, and the website have been 8 years in the making, because we didn't want to put out the film until the solutions were even more powerful and coherent than the problem that we had unveiled.
Now, I imagine you are pretty much aware that there have been other films before yours that, Zeitgeist and Psyched's Addendum, and also Awakening, and so many other films that have tapped into the problems that you tapped into. So, for a lot of people that have been following all these kinds of information, maybe the information that you are presenting is not completely new, but the way that you have synthesized all the information for what's going on in planet Earth right now with humanity, it's a very great way to bring about either to the same audience or to new audiences, because the perspective is a little different in each of the films. Have you had any relation with all the people behind the other films that are tapping into the same issues?
Well, I really valued what they done. I really respect the work of people like David Icke, and I got to interview him for the film, and the work that Alex Jones has been doing, and Peter Joseph, and Jim Mars, and just so many people. Basically, what we're all doing is unveiling the reality that we're living in, and so it's not a matter of even on the scientific side, it's not a matter so much of discovering something new. It's of coming to a new understanding of the way the universe works in terms of fundamental principles, and in terms of hidden agendas that some human beings have perpetrated, which if we reveal them, then we can obsolete them and move on to ways of relating to each other, which can be really healthy for everyone. So I see us all on the same team, just bringing out information, not to have people believe it, but to wake people up to new ways of seeing new information so that they can then check into it themselves, use their own common sense and critical thinking, and then take whatever action they feel would be most important.
Have you received any threats for bringing this information out in the open?
No, I'm happy to report I haven't.
Oh, that's quite good. I hope you don't get any anyway after realizing how much movement the film has brought, because it has really revolved a lot of people in many ways, and that is really good because either they are with it or against it, but it's really moving a lot of people's reflections about what's really going on. And now coming into the information that you brought in the film, you found a code embedded in nature and icons of different cultures throughout ages. What is this code, and why do you think it is the key to a new and clear sustainable energy?
Well, first of all, let me make clear that I'm not the first person to come across this code. Numerous people have come across it. When I say I found it, it was in my own search. It was revealed in the investigations that I was doing, but I'm not by any means the only person or the first person to find it. But in terms of what the code is, basically what I think is that people who have come across this understanding in various cultures throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia, whether it was through their intuition, through their common sense, or through potentially contact with beings from beyond our planet or beyond our vibrational frequencies. Basically what the code reveals is how energy structures itself. It's just as simple as that. It's like, okay, what's nature doing to have consciousness build a material reality? And so basically it comes down to two patterns. And one is this torus pattern. I know you interviewed Nassim Haramein. I'm sure he probably talked about it as well. He's a good friend and someone that I worked together with for 6 years on this research. And the torus basically is the only pattern which sustains itself in a continuous medium. In other words, if you're going to have a whirlpool in water, it's going to be made of water, but what we identify is the form, is the vortex itself, and it will always be toroidal. The energy field around a live seed or around a human being or a planet or a solar system or a galaxy or a cluster of galaxies, really at every scale, the only form which can sustain itself without breaking apart is a smooth surface with a hole in the middle. And that's what a torus is. And basically, in terms of coding, if you look in the Mayan culture, the Egyptian cultures, in the Chinese culture, in the Kabbalistic tradition, again and again in these different cultures, in their stories and icons and buildings and so forth, they have embedded images or icons or stories about that embody this circular flow. And because once you understand that flow and you align your systems with it, that's the key to evolving as a human being and having healthy systems, whether they're technological or economic or whatever. So it really is the key to sustaining our own evolution as well as developing our consciousness. So the torus is the basic pattern of flow, and that you could also call a hydrogen atom just the simplest toroidal vortex in our particular level of reality. And when you get two of them together, then we call it helium. And as they start joining, when there's pressure that compresses it under the kind of pressures you get in red giant stars or supernovas or something like that, it creates more and more fractal vortices of these toroidal whirlpools. And as it does that, it builds through natural, sequential, most efficient geometries. And it turns out that there are 92 of these geometries which can hold themselves together. And we call, the science in the West calls that the periodic table of elements. And after 92, the outer toruses, the electrons, are no longer compelled to be drawn toward the nucleus sufficiently, so they're ready to wander off to other atoms, and that's uranium. That's where things start to get radioactive, because under the right conditions, all of a sudden the atom starts coming apart. And so what has been encoded, in my experience, from these different cultures is both the fundamental flow and the structure of space-time itself and of the material world. Because if we understand that, then we can build our systems, particularly our technologies, in alignment with that, rather than smashing atoms together and creating combustion or nuclear fission, and not only polluting our lives, but risking the future of life as we know it on planet Earth. Instead, if we align with these patterns, then the universe will very kindly and generously start pouring out abundant, clean energy. And I've been privileged to see this in multiple laboratories. And the good news is that technology already exists. The bad news is that so far they have been brutally suppressed by entities that want to control markets. They want to control other people's lives. And therefore these laboratories have been raided and shut down, and the inventors have been issued gag orders or harmed or threatened or
killed.
Assassinated, yeah.
Yeah, some have been killed. But now, if this is such a wonderful key to living a very interesting, peaceful, sustainable life on Earth, how in the world are we going to get there? And how are we going to get there with how human consciousness in general, because so many people are waking up, that's so true, yet there are so many others, maybe the few that are in the power, that want to keep it. But how are we going to reach to that point where we are able to manifest the use of these technologies if we are so governed by egos? I mean, even in spiritual realms, there's so many people fighting over their egos that, you know, as long as we are controlled by the ego and our greed, we are not actually going to be able to use any technology in favor of everybody, but just some few. So how do you think this is possible, that we evolve to a point that we overcome the desire to just think about the self and the greed and the desire that involves, that surrounds our human personality? Because in one way or another, we have all had these feelings or experiences. So how are we going to manage to get to the point that we can live peacefully on this planet?
Well, it's a very powerful question. I appreciate it a lot. For me, I start by recognizing that we're already living in this ego-dominated world. We're already living in a world with nuclear technology, and a very few people, and oftentimes very afraid, people who are obsessed with control and under the illusion that there's not enough to go around. These are the people with their fingers on the button of nuclear technology and wanting to create more and more nuclear power plants, and with nowhere to dump the toxic waste and all of that. And as well, those same people have monopolies on money making and on force. So I don't think bringing in a radiant or a 0 point or so-called free energy technology, which only works when you blend with energy as opposed to trying to explode it, I don't think that's going to put us in a worse situation. So not only will it bring in access to energy that could be available anywhere on the planet and lift everybody's lifestyle, but it also is one of the means that we can prove that we are in a universe. We're living in a universe of infinite abundance. So it's a paradigm shifter as well. And as we wake up to not only the technological aspects of honoring wholeness, but the economic ones as well, we can very quickly be living on a world where the lifestyle of everyone on the planet could be 6 to 10 times more prosperous, according to the economists that I've been working with, than they are right now. If you imagine, Gloria, doing the same amount of work that you do now or less, and having 6 times the amount of income and assets, just because we're operating in an honest and fair money system, that's just the beginning of what kind of planet we could be living on. And when people, in my experience, when people do have that kind of ease of the prosperity of not having to be sick, not having to be in debt, not having to be, afraid of these authoritarian forces, naturally our human generosity has an opportunity to blossom, and I think that's the world we're heading towards.
Well, we certainly hope so, but I still feel that, we have lived the past 2,000 years of known history under the umbrella of politics, religion, and the economy. Those are like the main pillars under which we have created the reality that we're living in. And I know you don't mention very much the religion part in your documentary, which I wonder why, and I hope you can let me know, because I do believe that these 3 pillars that I just mentioned are the ones that have either to change or to disappear in order for us to reclaim the power for the people and to the people. And so this seems to be a huge power struggle, because obviously the ones behind politics, economy, and religion are not willing to let go of their power. Yet in order for us to learn to live with the idea that we are all one, that is something that you also mentioned, and it's behind the torus and the vector equilibrium and all this sacred geometry that you have found, and all these other scientists also have mentioned it, and it's encoded, the idea that we are all one in its fractal universe. So how are we going to really overcome or go through this period of change, knowing that these 3 pillars is in one way or the other need to be transformed, and obviously they don't want to do that? So I would like to see what your comment about this is, and why you didn't include more about religion in your documentary.
Well, Gloria, I'm really glad that you do a radio program, because you ask powerful questions.
Thank you.
These are the conversations that I think we need to be in to go a whole different direction. And so let me address, first of all, the question about why I didn't go into religion in the film. First of all, I only had 2 hours. And it was not sufficiently productive to my wife and me to try to explore such a vast issue in the film itself. But we did go into the principles which I think transcend religion. And then on the website, we've got a whole section, one of the 12 main sectors of human endeavor that we identify as spirituality. And in that, I do a whole essay on my relationship to spirituality and religion. And just to put it in a nutshell, for me, the key word is always voluntary. As soon as somebody has the right to tell somebody else what to do, then you're off into a problem, because it's only going to get worse until it becomes tyranny, and you've got to go through revolution, and it always ends up in domination and violence. So with the word voluntary as a guide, if I look at spirituality, to me personally, we are all spiritual beings. We have a metaphysical essence that has a body, but our consciousness is not held within the body. As a scientist, I know that virtually every cell in my body is less than 7 years old, and yet I've been here all along. So there is something that I tend to call Foster that has cohered these trillions of atoms for over 60 years. So by definition, who I am is metaphysical. So call it spirit, whatever you want. As a scientist and as a direct experiencer and as a philosopher, it's clear to me that our essential being is not limited to or contained by the physical. So for me, what's most important is the experience of spirit or spirituality. And for me, when I experience myself as that core being of consciousness that is not bound, it's distinguished, it's distinct unto itself, but at the same time unified with a boundless field of energy. For me, aligning with that keeps expanding my sense of identity, my sense of belonging, and my experience of love. Now, I personally am not a religious person. I was taken to church as a child, but when I got old enough to start asking questions, the answers didn't make any sense to me. Unfortunately, my parents didn't make me continue to go. But going back to the word voluntary, it's fine with me. And I think for a sustainable, thriving society, I think it's fine for anybody to believe whatever they want. If they've heard a story that rings true for them and they like it and it gives them energy, it's fine if they want to believe whatever it is, for me, as long as they don't try to impose it involuntarily on someone else. So, your crusades and your inquisitions and the witch burnings and all this kind of stuff, that's simply where you forget voluntary and you start imposing your belief system, usually as an excuse for, money or political power, on other people with violence. So what I encourage is for people to honor one another's religion, but at the same time engage in conversations that are willing to challenge stories which may not make a whole lot of common sense, and to go beyond those to what is the essence that we're all sharing. I give an example on the website. I like to picture when I picture the religious situation on the planet, I like to picture myself that I'm flying in from some other dimension or some other planet. I speak none of the languages of Earth, but as I start flying around the planet, I see these people gathered, usually in beautiful architecture, with colored lights streaming through the window, and there's usually a nice smell, and people are singing, and they're being kind to each other, and so forth. And I think, aha, there's something essential going on here that is common to all human beings. And that, for me, is the best part of religion. Because religions are, at their best, are trying to get at or trying to offer a means of connecting with that. However, like so many other things, it has so often gotten abused by individuals to take it on as a means of controlling other people's lives, of threatening them, of taking their money. And that's where I think we need to begin having the conversation more openly of honoring people's belief systems, but not allowing them to violate anyone.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about then the other part, the politics and the economy, and how they could get transformed in order for us to be able to live in the people's powers and not in the few politicians' idea of how things have to be?
Yeah. Well, if you notice, a lot of us in the Western world grew up with the notion of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and Tooth Fairy and so forth, and then most of us have grown out of that. But there are other stories equally fantastic, equally true, literally incredible, that a large percentage of the population still believes in. And unfortunately, oftentimes leads to a lot of violence. And the two main stories that I'm talking about are the story of some religion based on an unprovable story that people are supposed to believe rather than trusting their direct experience. And the other one is the sanctity of the state, of the whole notion of a political structure itself, and the notion that if you give a few people complete control over the money and the military, somehow they're going to turn around and take care of you. It's never worked in history. In the case of the United States, it's taken about 200 years to come to basically the verge of complete tyranny and economic collapse and so forth. But even here, that's what's happened, and it's happened that way throughout history. So if you look at those two stories, it's like, how do human beings end up believing in such obviously not common sense stories? And if you look to the education system and to the religious system, the strategy is really simple. You get children when they're really young, you make them go to school, you make them go to church, And in both places, you scare the heck out of them. You tell them if they don't believe this, they're going to burn, and if you don't respect authority, you're going to end up in jail, and if you don't pay your taxes, the world's going to collapse, and all this kind of stuff. It takes about 12 years to indoctrinate someone to where they would no longer question believing in stuff like that, despite all the evidence to the contrary. And so I think what's happening, particularly with the internet and just the emergence of consciousness on this planet, is that we're starting to have the conversations, and Thrive really is dedicated to being a catalyst and facilitating the conversations where we sit down with each other like they're doing in the Occupy movement every night and say, okay, well, if the old systems aren't working, let's talk about who we are really. What would be fair? What would be systems that would work, and not just buy into some old political party or, some old political structure or economic structure, whatever. But let's create a new way of relating based on principles of decency and common sense. Mm-hmm. And then when you come to the economy, the third piece in your trilogy there, we have been indoctrinated through our school and through the media to believe that economics is so complicated that we need to look to the experts. Well, how's that working out? The entire world is collapsing economically. The so-called most powerful advanced nation on the surface of the planet, the United States, is the greatest debtor in the history of humankind. So we've taken this experiment as far as we can go. So for me, myself, I just finally had to say, okay, I want to understand how money works. And I'll share a personal story on this, that my main teacher waking me up to the whole money scam was my own son. So I really encourage everyone to listen to this next generation. Listen to your own children, and don't think that you know better just because you're older, because they're thinking newly, these young people. And in fact, I'll throw in a plug. My son is from his own research into the economy and what's going on, has just published a book that launched along with Thrive the movie. And you can, if you want to check it out on Amazon, it's called Nonviolent Prosperity, the Principles of Liberty. And it lays out this whole situation economically and how we can actually create an economy based on the autonomy and sovereignty of the individual, and based on completely nonviolent principles of integrity. So in all three of those areas, for me, what's beginning to happen is we're coming back to truth, we're coming back to common sense, and we're coming to nonviolence.
Now, it seems that there's a great synchronicity between all these changes happening in the consciousness of people, like the idea of waking up, and all the prophecies about the turn of to a new age, the Aquarian age, or the age of enlightenment, or whatever we have heard through prophecies, either the Maya, the Hopi, or even I don't know, the Bible and whatever. And it seems to be that there's an interest in synchronicity, as if all that is happening has to happen, or it was meant to happen, in order for us to take that step to a change in consciousness, so that we can realize that we have been living in a huge illusion that maybe was necessary for us to go through so we can wake up. And with this, I just want to ask you, do you think that we are really beings with a free will, that we are choosing what's going on, or maybe we are puppets of some greater energy that is marking all this synchronicity as to what has to happen next in our evolutionary process?
Well, I think in a sense both are true. From my study of physics and philosophy, I believe that we do have free will, in the sense that I can choose to, hang up, or you can change the subject any moment you want, and that's true. You can verify that in a moment. On the other hand, philosophically, that requires looking at, when we say we have free will, who are we? Who is the I that is? And in the same way that every molecule in our body is responding to a unified consciousness. I think humanity and our solar system and the galaxy are part of a much larger consciousness that influences everything and at the same time honors free will. So I think that both are true. And I would invite your listeners also to check out on our website. I have a section called Worldview, where I've done a lot of research with the top scholars I could find on the history of the evolution of consciousness. And independently, about 7 or 8 of them that I studied all came to the same realization that, like the colored rainbow and like the octave of music, like the chakra system and so forth, consciousness seems to also be evolving in a 7-stage process. And that where we are as human beings is in about the 4th stage on this planet at this particular time. And they all agree on this independently. They call it different things, but the dynamic is the same. And one of my main teachers, a man named Arthur Young, who wrote the book, The Reflexive Universe, The Evolution of Consciousness, which is the most accurate meta-paradigm for how the universe works and evolves that I've ever come across. In his system, he points out that in evolution that we can experience with our senses, from pure potential through subatomic particles to atoms, molecules, and then plants and animals, then human beings. That's the art of evolution that we can identify so far. That and then each of those subsets has its own art, its own octave of stages. And so if you look at the human octave, we are in the human octave in the 4th stage, at the same place that the molecule is in the overarching octave of human evolution. And it's interesting, when you look at what does the molecule have to do in the evolutionary process, the molecule organized atoms in such a way that it learned how to balance temperature. It learned how to balance the energy outside with the energy inside itself in order to sustain temperature. And because it mastered that skill, all of life as we know it, through the plants, animals, and humans, has been able to evolve and take that skill further. Then if you take that into the human realm, okay, since we're in the same stage as in our human arc, what human beings are having to learn. And these various philosophers, researchers, came to similar conclusions that what human beings are needing to learn is, in the words of Jane Elgin, reconciliation. We're in the same way the molecule needed to learn to balance energy, we're needing to learn to get along, to align with energy inside ourselves, in our body, in our emotions, in our thoughts, but also with other people and with our environment. And when we master that sufficiently, that quality, that skill of reconciliation, then we can actually create a sustainable society. And then what emerges in the next few stages are possible for human beings who are sufficiently experiencing that state of harmony with their environment, and with one another, and with themselves. We can only imagine through extrapolating from the powers of other stages of evolution. But it's almost exciting beyond imagination to realize the creativity and passion that would be unleashed by getting beyond these problems caused by lack of alignment with our bodies, with our emotions, with our thinking, with our economics, with our technological systems. So personally, that's what I'm most excited about. Looking forward to seeing, the next 20 years about.
Now, like regarding the DNA and how it relates to our evolutionary process, I wonder what happened with ancient civilizations that really understood this code of the torus and the vector equilibrium, and they have encoded for themselves and future generations this information in sacred geometry. They probably understood that. I mean, I know that architects and engineers cannot rebuild or replicate the pyramids of Egypt nowadays with all the precision that they have. So in ancient civilizations, they probably understood much better than we still do now, understand all this energy system. And I don't know what their DNA was those days, but if the idea is that our nature is to thrive, then what happened? That instead of moving forward, we came to a period of darkness and disconnection from our soul and disconnection from our reason of existence, or understanding that we are all one. If they had understood that in ancient civilizations, then what happened that we have forgotten it?
Well, it's an intriguing question, and let's approach it from a couple of different points of view, because it begs the question, well, how did they know in Egypt? How did they have the technologies that could move stones that we couldn't come close to moving now, build pyramids that were accurate beyond what we can do now? And for me, there's a number of different possible explanations. One of them is that there were intuitives who were able to move to levels of consciousness, levels of vibrational frequencies where they could access their realms of consciousness, or the Akashic records, or whatever you want to call it, where they could tap into knowledge that that regular people aren't walking around with. You know, and you see that occasionally with musical prodigies or something like that, where they're simply pouring through this knowledge that didn't come about through study and memorization and all that kind of stuff. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is that I propose in the film is that, and the Sim talks about, is that ancient cultures have been visited for thousands of years by various extraterrestrial species that have shared knowledge and created structures to encode the core principles of that knowledge in ways that we're just now beginning to get glimpses of with our current technology. So that's the second possible explanation. And then the third, for me, I learned through, I have spent many years of my life studying it and teaching the nonviolent martial art of Aikido. And the founder of Aikido, a man named Morihei Ueshiba, a Japanese man who died just in 1969, he had been trained in the ancient spiritual tradition of Kotodama, which means knowledge of the vibration of the universe. And this spiritual lineage went back at least 4,000 years. And I studied some of their ancient documents, and in those documents, they actually say that their knowledge of Kotodama was going to be suppressed for several thousand years. And then it was going to be, and during that time, the kind of left brain rational thinking was going to be promoted, and that kind of thinking was going to enable the building technologies which would ultimately end up in something that in their description sounded very much like our current computers. And when that happened, the computers would provide the ability to destroy at such a great scale that the intuitive capacities would need to be reawakened, so that the intuitive and the rational could then go hand in hand and build the whole next level of human consciousness. And the Kotodama tradition was based on what they called 49 motive sounds, different syllables that they would pronounce that had different effects, sort of like in the beginning was word. And then there was a 50th sound which summed up all of the other 49. And that sound was basically, I was taught the chant through which to create that sound, and it's basically, the chant goes Suawei, and what you do is you make a torus with your mouth, and you imagine a toroidal field around your body, and what happens, because I did this for many years in meditation and so forth, when you do that and resonate in particular frequencies, your consciousness expands to a next level. And in their ancient books, they actually talked about passing this knowledge on to the Hebrews, who would safeguard it for generations. And it's interesting that the word for God in the Hebrew tradition that people weren't supposed to say, that they were told by the politicians not to say, is Yahweh, which is almost the identical chant to Suawei. It's Yahweh. And I think that knowledge of how to expand your consciousness through imagining and resonating with your own toroidal field was suppressed by the powers that be back then to keep people from thinking for themselves and accessing these high realms, and now it's being reawakened all over the planet.
So it seems that
long answer to a short question.
Yeah, so it seems that, this wise people understood that we had to go through a period of what we could call now darkness, because we realized that it's been darkness, and that maybe that just a cycle of the universe, like we go through, the winter, spring, summer, autumn, like we go through those changes. Maybe like in the universe goes through the same cycles, understanding in a fractal terms that that has to happen in the universe. So we have to go through periods of darkness, maybe so we can awaken the light and the understanding, and eventually that's a way to stimulate the spirit in the human consciousness. Do you think that's one of the reasons why we have to go through dark periods?
Well, at the core of it, I agree with that notion, because in my studies, I have never seen a system, an alive system that doesn't breathe. But energy is always expanding out, and physics recognizes that. That's radiation. But physics doesn't recognize very well that energy is also always contracting in. And just like when you pour water out of a small-mouth bottle, it has to create an exchange. So you get this glug, 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 where the air and the water trade back and forth. It's the same thing with the human body or a black hole or anything else. You have this breathing that goes on where you alternate between an emphasis on energy out, energy in, energy out, energy in. And what Arthur Young talks about in the model that I referred to before is that consciousness in each octave of evolution goes through 3.5 stages of contraction, followed by 3.5 stages of expansion, just like your heart does, just like your lungs do, just like the Schumann resonance of the earth does. So I think when we get into periods like we've been going through recently, where there's so much of a sense of these forces wanting to dominate and constrict people's lives and make them afraid and take their stuff and all that, I think it fits with the philosophers that I was describing, saying we're in the fourth stage, because the fourth stage of the evolution is the most contracted phase. Consciousness comes into a body in order to learn the lessons that you can learn through being in the physical realm. Think of all that you've learned about food, about sex, about love, about energy, about ecstasy and so forth through being in a body. And then ultimately we exit the body again, but in the process we've learned a lot from being in the body. And there's suffering involved in the process of being in the body. So I think the darkness that we're experiencing now is part of a predictable phase of contraction. It's predictable by the model that I'm talking about, but back to your free will question, we can't just sit back and wait for evolution to see these problems for us. That would simply have the experiment of consciousness on planet Earth fail for now, and it would get set back, hundreds of millions of years, or go to another planet or something like that. I think this is where the free will comes in, that it's predictable that we're in this stage of maximum contraction, like the molecule was, and each of us, I think, can feel that pull from inside ourselves to expand our own identity, to expand our own capacity to fulfill our potential. And this is the stage in human evolution where consciousness itself needs to participate in order to evolve successfully. You and I woke up in a body and it's like, oh, wow, that was neat. It's like I didn't need to figure out how to breathe and beat my heart and everything. But this whole notion of how to actually survive with one another on a healthy planet and unleash human creativity and love, that's one we actually need to do with our consciousness in a participatory fashion.
Now, what do you think then about the Occupy Wall Street? Understanding that, there is so much, at least from what I understood in the film, that the people behind the economies, they like the Great Depression, what they did in the Great Depression, that they benefited from the Great Depression, and whereas other people were really going through hell. And now, you know, the Occupy Wall Street movement and the Indignados in Spain and all the issues that of people waking up and complaining about this, and the relationship to creating a one world order. What do you think about the Occupy Wall Street movement in relation to the possibility of stimulating the world order?
Well, it's one of the most exciting things for sure that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. I think we're getting to be present for and to be part of the first global revolution. And it's so ironic when you see the different reports, the different takes on it. You know, on the one hand, people, oh, it's just a bunch of ragtag hippies with tents in the park, you know, they're not making any sense and they don't have any claims. And on the other hand, there's this impulse that spreads throughout the planet where people are standing up and saying, no, I will not be abused and I won't let my loved ones be abused by whatever forces are doing this anymore, and I'm going to do whatever it takes relentlessly to turn this thing around. And so I'm thrilled with what's going on, and I've been in conversations with a lot of people from different cities who are in the movement, and they're thrilled about the artifact that our movie and website is, because we made this movie to save people time and to give them tools for exactly this. You know, so that people don't have to spend a lifetime trying to figure out what's going on. They can engage with the film and then see if it makes sense to them. They can go further if they want to on the website until things do make sufficient sense to them. And then there are all sorts of tools provided as to what principles can we actually operate sustainably by. What principles can we organize by that don't just create new us and them dichotomies or new forms of authoritarian tyranny and so forth. So there are people who are taking the Thrive film now around to all different Occupy sites all over the world, and they're starting to access the website. But one quick story. Recently, early on in the movement, I saw an interview with the police commissioner, Commissioner Kelly, in New York City, and CNN was asking him, well, you know, this thing might get out of control. How are you going to control it? And he kind of rolled his eyes and he said, well, you know, I'm not really sure. He said, usually what happens is we identify the leaders and we bring them in and we tell them what the regulations are, and if they comply, we give them a permit for a little while. He said, with this movement, we can't see the leaders, and the people don't seem to be particularly interested in our regulations or our permits. And people out there, this is the key, decentralizing power and basing it on the sovereignty of each individual and their rights is the key, because it's unattackable and it has an organic power that is unlimited as long as we don't start creating new violations. And that's where the challenge now is to not sell out to some political party or some union or some ideology or something like that, but to actually find what are the principles for human beings treating each other justly that we can begin building a whole new society on. And that is what the final chapter of our film is about, and the whole solution stages and liberty section of our website really goes in depth into not only what is the philosophy, but how do you apply the philosophy to create new economic systems, new educational systems, new media systems that don't impose anything on anyone, but provide the capacity for people to realize their full potential without being violated.
So you think like the movements like the Wall Street movement and the Indignados, and there's movements in Chile and going all over the world, you think this is a way that the New World Order can be stopped from being created? I know there's agendas already on the way and so many things, but you think these kind of movements are the ones that are going to stop them?
Well, I think it's a huge part of it. I think it's kind of the vanguard. What they've done, obviously, all the courageous people who've gone out in the cold and with the pepper spray and rubber bullets and real bullets and all this stuff all over the world, they have been the vanguard saying to the rest of humanity, wake up, we can't take this anymore. Let's figure out what we can do. Now, we're moving into winter in a lot of the planet, and the next phase, in my estimation, is not going to be so dependent on who has the time to be out actually in the streets, but what is the value of the conversations that are getting had, that move into action, which people can take individually in their lives every day with their lifestyle choices. Where they bank, what they buy, how they treat people, how they act politically and so forth, that don't take a lot of time and money. And then also, what are the mass actions that we can do where we come together and don't tolerate having a Federal Reserve scam anymore? Don't tolerate the suppression of free energy. On and on. There are various really powerful issues that we go into on the website and in the film that people can now begin moving all of this energy that's arising and move it in a non-violent way. Gandhi knew about this. King knew about this. It's not like, we've got to get armed and take them over and, be the new authoritarian force. It's no, we need to learn how to withdraw our support from any of the institutions which are portraying this agenda. The good news is they all depend on our support. If you pull your money out of these corporations, out of these banks, you don't sign up for the military, you don't vote for any politicians who are going for the old agenda, all of these systems will collapse very, very quickly. And then new ones can rise in its place, and it's critical that we do the philosophical investigations to align around the principles that can actually create a new, voluntary world based on liberty, as opposed to based on giving people a few power in the state, giving a few people a lot of power in the state, or giving a few people unfair powers to print money and give it out at special rates to their buddies and so forth, like the economic system.
Now, one of the things I really
encouraged. I've never been so optimistic since I started this whole quest, 45 years ago.
Oh, great. Well, let's hope it goes in that direction. I got a couple more questions. Like, one of the things I really enjoyed when I was listening to the solution part is that we need to live with rules but no rulers. In this way, it would mean that we don't need leaders, but rather, I don't know if the word would be communitary anarchy or some sort of learning to live with the permaculture principles or learning to live in community. But to learn to live with rules but no rulers would mean that we don't need no more leaders, or we don't need no more people telling us what to do, but that we can figure out as community. Is that what you meant in that part?
Yes. Thanks for tuning into that, Gloria. For me, it's actually the most important part of the entire film, and the most radical. And it goes back to this word voluntary. I kind of trouble with people because they say, you've got so many far-out things in that movie. And it's true. There are a lot of things that some people haven't thought about before. There's the whole UFO thing, and there's the whole global domination agenda, and there are these new energy technologies, and on and on. But the most radical notion I'm finding is the notion that humanity could not only survive but thrive without a state, without a political state telling us what we can and can't do and taking our money against our will. So I've investigated this for many years, and let me mention it this way. What I suggest in the film is that the core navigating insight for a thriving civilization is that nobody gets to violate anyone else or take their stuff except in true self-defense against their will. And it's the one thing I found that everybody agrees to, at least for themselves. I've never found anybody who wants to be violated involuntarily. But I have found a fair number of people who think, well, I'm one of those people who knows best, so I should be able to tell the ignorant masses what they should do. And, it's never worked out. As soon as a few people get the right to take other people's stuff in the form of involuntary taxes, it always builds to greater and greater tyranny, and ultimately there's a revolution, and the whole thing starts all over again. But now in the nuclear age, a revolution could mean that gets into violence could mean the end of life as we know it. So we're really at the point in history where we have to figure this out. What is this? If nobody wants to be ruled, then what are the rules? And you mentioned the word anarchy. And the word anarchy is accurate in the sense that it simply means no government, nobody telling you what you have to do. But it's not effective because we have been trained through our schools and through the media to think that anarchy means, blood in the streets. It's chaos, no rules, and all that stuff. It's simply not true. It's a logical fallacy. But to be effective, what I prefer to refer to is a world of voluntary association. So if you want to have a neighborhood committee or association, great, you form it, and whoever wants to be in it is in it, and whoever doesn't have to be. And if you want to choose a leader to organize the dues or lead projects or something like that, then great. You've chosen to have them voluntarily organizing stuff, but they don't ever get to tell you what to do against your will. You can always leave or elect someone else. So if the basic rule is nobody gets violated, then if we, and I'm sure this is what's coming up already and will be more and more in these Occupy conversations around the world, is, okay, then what are the rules for a free society? And the first one that needs to go, in my opinion, it needs to be a transition so that people are taken care of in the process. But the first one that needs to go is involuntary taxation. The notion that someone can come at gunpoint and take the money that you worked hard to earn in order to give it to bankers or to give subsidies to multinational corporations or to wage wars of aggression to take over other people's stuff is just outrageous when you stop and think about it. But people say, but if we don't have a state, everything's going to collapse. Well, there's all sorts of fantastic thinking that has been done and is still being done on processes of community decision-making and processes of voluntary association economically and processes of private competing security companies and insurance companies, not the ones that we're used to, private mercenary armies waging war for the state, but basically police organizations which have to depend on their reputation for nonviolence and trustworthiness in order to survive in a truly free, unsubsidized, non-state intervention market. The things called dispute resolution organizations, where organizations would basically be resolving disputes based on a body of law that is truly about protecting individual rights, not aggressively telling people what they can and can't do as long as they're not harming anyone. And the thinking on anywhere where this has been tried to any extent has been very successful economically and in people's lives, and so it usually gets shut down once again. But this is the direction that I think we're going. We're not going to be there tomorrow, so we need to transition. But in the process of transition, as I lay out in the movie, the key is keep your eye on the goal, which is absolute liberty for everyone, nonviolence.
Mm-hmm. Now,
in the process of getting there, don't create any new violations. In other words, no new taxes at all. Mm-hmm. And as we're phasing out the old taxes, what we're doing is at least cut the military budget in half. We'd still have, as big a budget as the whole rest of the world combined. So that would handle defense during the transition. But also, you get rid of the Federal Reserve, and between those two, you've restored, by my estimation, about $1.5 trillion a year that is simply freed up that could go to helping people with their health care and transitioning to organic gardening and housing and so forth while we're in a transition, not so that people become dependent on a welfare state, but so that the people who've been most injured by our system can be helped, just like if you had a bad knee, if you had an injured knee, the rest of the body would help take care of that knee while the whole body was healing. So in transition, a certain number of years, while we're moving to the second stage, which is shrinking the government to only the protection of individual rights and the stewarding of a certain amount of the commons, of clean air, clean water, and the air that the vibrational frequencies in the atmosphere that we transmit energy on, and so forth. That's stage 2, and people are taken care of out of the freed up funds and the restoration of integrity to the economic and educational media systems during stage 1. And in stage 2, when things have shrunken down in the government, there will be so much prosperity that people will be so much more able to take care of one another. In an era where they've got, by my estimation, 6 to 10 times as much income and assets working the same or less just through having an honest money system without the taxation and with the free energy system that can be brought in. And in my research, I have no question that people who are healthy and prosperous take care of each other way, way better than any government ever has.
That I think
ultimately,
that's
we can
true.
head towards stage 3, which is where systems have been figured out enough that the voluntary negotiations are working based on respect and honesty and nonviolence, that you can move into a stateless society that has a clear justice system based on non-violation, and it has clear security systems that are accessible to everyone. But there are no rulers with special powers that say, I get to put on a uniform and come and take your stuff.
Now, this is quite interesting because, well, maybe it can happen that way. Maybe it can happen in all the ways that other people, like the Venus Project, which is another very interesting project. And also there's Scottish, I don't remember the name right now, but they have lived in the principles principles that were balanced with nature. And, because what's prosperity? Is prosperity having more, or prosperity is to live in balance and in peace, in order, in some sort of justice that allow us as humans to enjoy our experience in this planet. I wonder, because what's prosperity after all, and if it's having more, I wonder if that is just stimulating and cultivating our greed, that it is, part of our human makeup in our personality, which is just a mask. But that's what we identified most with, at least nowadays. So, what is your idea of prosperity at this point in time?
Well, it's a particularly interesting question for me, Gloria, because I have been kind of a human experiment that I got to watch myself. Because when I graduated from college, I found out that I was inheriting some money from my grandparents. Not a tremendous amount, but enough that if I took care of it, like a garden, that it would put off enough produce that I could decide what I wanted to do with my daily life, and I could help take care of some people around me. And so one of the things that happened right at that same time is a friend in college introduced me to Zen meditation. So I began meditating quite a bit. And as I got deeper and deeper into my meditation, I started hearing a sound. And at first I thought, this must be, the angelic realm or something like that. And the closer I listened to the sound, the more I finally realized that what I was listening to was masses of human wailing in despair. And it would not go away. And the more I listened to it, the more my heart just started to open and realized, okay, I am part of humanity. This is what I am embedded in. So no matter how much money or talent or opportunity I have, in my soul, I am still connected with everything else. And finally, in my meditation process, I just naturally committed my life to doing everything in my power to relieve the suffering that I was hearing in that wailing. And when I did that, the wailing disappeared. And my life commitment didn't. And the entire rest of my life I dedicated to using my resources and whatever privilege and talents I've had to doing everything in my power to find the principles and to share the knowledge that would not just be some charitable contribution where, oh, I've got a bunch of food, so I'll give you dinner or something like that, but that would actually empower everyone to come to a path of thriving. And I agree with you that prosperity in its essence is balance. You know, I know a lot of wealthy people, and they wouldn't trade anything. They wouldn't trade their health for any amount of money. And health is being in balance, physically, emotionally, psychologically. You know, in terms of your state of love and so forth. So, absolutely, what I have found. You know, and as you mentioned, there's there's discussions on the internet of, well, if he's got this money, he should just give it away. He should just give this film away. You know, and if I thought that was the most powerful thing I could do, I would in a minute. But I have watched. First of all, I can't afford to. I couldn't even afford to finish the film on my own. I borrowed money and I brought in other investors in order to finish this project. This was a multi-million-dollar project that was beyond my resources with the film and the website. So it you know, people project, oh, a gamble, it must be unlimited wealth, and it's simply not. And the other thing is that the powers that be, in my research, have sort of cleverly harnessed people's good intentions into nonprofit charitable organizations. And there are, as Paul Hawkins says, over 1 million wonderful ones in the world doing great work. And then the financial collapse hits, and so many of those organizations are just drying up because of people's individual economic situation. Whereas the businesses are, a lot of the businesses that have a valuable product are continuing to thrive. So my strategy was to create a product that would be of such value, real value in people's lives, that they would be willing to exchange a very small amount of money. So you can rent it for $5, or you can get together with a group of people and see it for literally pennies, or go to a free public screening and see it for nothing. So we wanted to make it available to everyone, but at the same time, we wanted, through a true free market of voluntary exchange, we wanted to exchange value with people in such a way that our endeavor would be sustainable. And if it were successful in that way, if it were a win-win for everyone involved, then others would want to imitate it, and they would need to look and see, okay, well, what's the essence of the project? There's solid research that looked for integrity, found the truth, was willing to risk sharing it, a beautiful and high-quality format, and then exchange it in a voluntary way with people, and that created an ongoing sustainable enterprise. Because if the Thrive Movement enterprise were stalled because we didn't have any revenue, then our power would be taken away. Yes, we got some information out into the world, but you know, you mentioned the Zeitgeist movement. I have tremendous respect for Peter Joseph and that whole crew of what they did, and unfortunately, I've heard recently that they've kind of stalled on making their next movie through financial squabbles of not having the money to do it. So I'm looking for a hybrid. I'm looking for a successful organic model of voluntary exchange of value that has movements like ours really prosper in a voluntary and successful way.
Yes, definitely. I completely hear you, and you've received a lot of support from people that say, you know, why are you complaining? I mean, can't you see how much this costs to do? So many years behind it. I mean, $5 is not that much, and obviously other people that are complaining, and you know, it's inevitable. Yeah, when there's more than two people, you're always going to have conflict. But there's one thing that I want to ask you in regards to free energy, because somebody just gave me that question, and there's a lot of us that are really anxious to get to that point where we can actually see the technology being implemented, the free energy, or you know, alternative energies being with not so much cost, because right now solar panels are extremely expensive, and you know, these alternative energies are expensive, and the free energy, which is something that we know it's possible now. I mean, most people that have seen the video and that are are aware, we know that that technology is possible. Yet, do you think that this technology will be manifested for humanity when in consciousness we have evolved enough for it to be able to be manifested without any hindrances or obstacles created by the powers that be?
Yes, I do. And I think as a kind of an embodiment of that, what's going on with the popularity of the Occupy movement now is showing groundswell of people who are going to be insisting on justice. They're not going to be willing to be screwed financially anymore. They're not going to be willing to be cheated out of their incomes. They're not going to be willing to have to pay for exorbitant utilities costs when it is already could be available for pennies. So I think it's going to take a little while because it's going to take a mass movement, and that's one of the reasons I would have on the website what we call critical mass action, where you can sign up for to indicate your willingness to take action with a large group of people when there are enough, or to contribute your financial resources or other skills and abilities that you have to organize and then take action when there's a large enough collection of intention and capability to be effective. And one of the areas that we're doing that in is in the free energy area. You know, I have seen these technologies, so I know that they're real, and it moved me to tears when I was actually in the presence of these things. It's truly like being in a garden and realizing, wow, you know, the life force is free, and look at the food that it's giving us. And being in the presence of one of these technologies is like, oh my gosh, you can feel it breathing. It's tapping the in wave, tapping the balance, including the in wave, not just kind of the out wave of radiation. And so, given that it exists, and that more and more people are finding out that it exists, as people pool their resources in an organized way, I believe that our strategy will be to have enough money and enough widespread appeal that we've got the resources to do very sound development of the research that's already been done. Mm-hmm. That we will have enough money to provide the security for the inventors in these laboratories to protect them, and if the powers that be try to come and take it away or do any damage, that it will be streamed live on the internet instantaneously so that everybody sees it, and the masses of people who don't want that to happen will now turn out, like Occupy, and say, no, you can't do that to these people. That the money will provide the legal defense fund to protect these people in court when they try to create frivolous lawsuits or make them adhere to gag orders where they're not supposed to develop these technologies or talk about them in the interest of national security, and meanwhile we're sending our children off to die and kill other people in foreign countries, you know, battling over the oil from dinosaurs.
Amazing.
I mean, when you stand back, it's so silly that I think all that's going to really be needed is the critical mass of awareness waking up, because the technologies already are there, the resources are beginning to organize, and the strategies are surfacing.
Yes, and one of the last questions is, like, why do you think NASA is hiding so much the information about extraterrestrial life? I mean, the people that you interviewed definitely have evidence of their existence, and a lot of people, I would say, I don't know, I cannot speculate on this, but I know a lot of people that have seen UFOs, and that, you know, it would be very narcissistic to think that we are the only ones in this whole universe. So why do you think NASA keeps on hiding this information, and why extraterrestrial intelligence has not appeared massively on this planet yet?
Well, it's a critical inquiry, and I would recommend to everyone that they, whether you see the movie or not, at least go on our website and look in the Follow the Money section and the Economics section. It appears throughout the website. We've created a pyramid to try to capture in really rudimentary form the results of our decade-long follow the money quest of how power structure works on planet Earth. And you and I and people in their everyday life are at the bottom level, and above us is government. And we tend to think Barack Obama must be the most powerful person in the world because he's the head of the United States and so forth. But there are 7 levels to this power structure as we lay it out, and government is only level 2. It's become clearer and clearer to people that that the government works for the corporations. And the Supreme Court Citizens United decision made that very clear, that now corporations can literally, buy their positions right out in the open. So it's blatant now that corporations and their lobbyists and their funds run the political structure. But that's only level 3. That's the so-called corporatocracy. Up above them is the big banks, because all these corporations depend on getting loans at low discount rates from big banks in order to have their leverage in the world. And so they've got to be on the good side of the big bankers. This is Citigroup and Chase and Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo and Bank of America. These are the entities run by individuals who really the corporations have to answer to. But that's only the next level. Above them is the central bank. In this country, the Federal Reserve, but also virtually every country in the world has its own centralized bank, whatever it's called. There are only a handful of countries in the world that don't have a centralized banking system that is a part of this whole international cartel. And for the most part, those are the very countries that the military-industrial complex is invading one after another. If you investigate the so-called axis of evil, they're basically the countries who have refused central banking.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a side tangent. If you follow those banks, those centralized banks answer to the international banks, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and then the 7th level is the Bank of International Settlements. And most people have never heard of it, and that's intentional. But this is the bank of all banks, located in Switzerland, but it really is the bank run by the Rothschild family. And then really all the banks in the world are subsidiaries of this. And if I had to focus on one centralization of power that is running this agenda, it really is the Rothschild agenda. And they have the leverage to influence all these other levels below them. But how does that relate back to UFOs? The powers that be keep control over people's lives by controlling money, controlling energy, but also controlling people's food and the media and education and all of that. But especially after money, the most important one is energy. If there are entities from beyond our planet who are visiting us, then by our laws of physics, they couldn't be here if they're burning fossil fuels. It would take them 300 generations or something like that to get here from the nearest star, and they certainly wouldn't be able to carry enough fuel. And who the heck would want to spend 300 generations just to visit planet Earth, at this particular stage especially? So clearly, if they're here, and the evidence is absolutely overwhelming, thousands and thousands of first-hand reports, including hundreds of testimonies from high-level government and military people who've been willing to risk their lives to get the truth out about it. So Adam Trombley in our film makes the connection very beautifully between the suppression of UFO information and the suppression of free energy. And Jack Casher, a physicist in the movie, says if here, which he's convinced they are, then they have already tapped into what we're talking about. They've tapped into some way of accessing energy wherever they are, rather than having to carry it with them, explode it, and control the explosion along the way. So I have had the privilege to talk with a number of people who supposedly have had direct experience of contact with these ships and with some of the beings, and independent of one another. It gives me chills still thinking about it, even though it sounds so wild and crazy. Independent of each other, several of them have been shown the drive on these ships, and everyone reports the same type of toroidal vortex that I'm convinced is not only accessing the vast energy that surrounds us in space all the time, and that we're accessing just to be alive, but it's also, in the process of doing that, it's creating its own gravitational field. And Einstein pointed out that when you alter matter, you alter space. When you alter space, you alter time. And so what I believe is going on is that once you learn how to tap into this infinite toroidal energy dynamic, you not only can get infinite energy, you can also then tune that energy and aim your ship. But you just change the pressure, put a lower pressure on the top and on the bottom of your ship, just like on the wing of an airplane, and all of a sudden you're flying effortlessly. So they've got anti-gravity propulsion as well, but also that they are altering time and space by creating these independent fields of energy which you're inside of. And some of these witnesses describe exactly that. And the multiple photographic records of UFOs which are flying at thousands and thousands of miles an hour and turning, more than 90-degree angles, or stopping on a dime, things which would absolutely crush any type of human body and defy our laws of physics as scientists now know them. The only explanation I can come up with that makes any sense is, yes, in fact, they are creating their own gravitational field such that beings inside that field are affected only by their immediate field, just like we're affected by the gravitational field of the sun and of the moon, but we're not really affected by the gravitational field very much in the neighboring solar system. Mm-hmm. So that, for me, that's how all that ties together. They don't want you to know about UFOs because then people en masse are going, okay, well, we want some of those motors, and we're not going to stand for you suppressing them.
Yeah. That would be probably one of the reasons. Now, like right now, in the moment in time that we are living, what do you think is the most important tool or the most important thing every human being ought to do to stimulate the consciousness, to raise our level of consciousness so we can manifest sooner than later this vibration that will help manifest the free energy technologies and a new world where we can actually not realize, not theoretically, but practically, the idea that we are all one?
What a great question. I would approach it first on a generalized level, as I do in the movie, that it's really critical to have accurate data on what's going on in the world, and it's valuable to save yourself time by consulting with experts in their different fields, like I did in the movie, and share hundreds of these interviews on the website. But ultimately, I think the single most powerful thing that you can do is learn to live inside yourself. Because I think we are all toroidal energy fields, and every sustainable toroidal energy field is centered by absolute stillness. And my research indicates to me that that center is our antenna. It's like DNA is an antenna for information. I think the center of our energy being is an antenna that accesses cosmic consciousness and expresses it through our own individuality. But I think the more we learn to quiet the noise of all the chatter of other people's belief systems and our fears and our busyness and so forth, as we learn to quiet that and truly listen inside, I think it begins to direct us. And as we align with that voice, that's what I would call integrity. Because that voice, when you're tempted to cheat somebody, or to lie to somebody, or to take somebody's stuff, we all have this inner voice inside which is telling us, don't go there, no, you're going to pay the price. And sure, we have the free will to go ahead and do it, but then we do in fact pay the price because we're living in a totally interconnected universe. So as we learn to actually align our thinking with the inner voice, and then speak only that, then act only that, then I think we start to live lives of integrity. And as we do that, then each of us is called to different actions. And this is where the activism comes in. And I recommend to people on our website that they focus their action by looking at 3 levels of activism. One is in terms of immediate needs. So if people are hungry and you can take them some food and you're pulled to do that, do it. You know, if you can give them shelter or something to wear, protect them from being harmed, do that. The second level is systemic change. There, if you look at the systems those people are embedded in, there's something about those systems, almost always the economic system and the state government system, that has them experiencing that suffering in the long run unnecessarily. So the second level is, if you're interested in changing those systems, then get active in protesting and boycotting the systems that don't work, and proposing the systems and fighting nonviolently, working for the systems that actually would work. And then that takes us to the third level, which is the consciousness shift. And that's to actually keep growing your own consciousness to a more and more fundamental universal morality or ethic. And I mean, I've been a member of the consciousness movement in various forms for practically my entire life. One of my friends said recently, I just love this statement, he said, it's not quite enough just to become more conscious. It really matters what you become more conscious of. And he said that after watching Thrive for the first time. And I think it's a really important point, that as we're waking up and integrating our large self, our inner being, it also really matters, if we're pulled to do something in the world, what we become conscious of. And so then a very highly leveraged place to work is in waking up yourself, speaking up with your friends, it's risky, then acting up out in public and connecting with other people over the internet through media like this, and then taking the actions both in your personal life and as effective groups to stand up for and just to relentlessly insist upon systems that honor the sovereignty and sanctity of every single person.
So you would think that part of connecting with our center, with our singularity point, as Nassim would say, would be using any form of inner work, meditation, or whether it's active meditation like doing Qigong and Tai Chi or Zen walking, or doing sitting meditation, or anything that can really help us to connect with our inner world, because that, if that's the major point, and that is something that we have never been taught, and we don't know apparently how to do it, would you recommend any kind of activity, Aikido, martial arts, or any kind of discipline that helps us to connect with our inner voice?
I think that's critical. I think it's right at the core of the whole thing. I think it's very challenging to be healthy, much less to be effective, without some sort of practice that basically tunes your organism. And I think that the variety of practices is boundless. I think it can be anything from organized meditation and yoga to dancing to singing. I had one teacher, she's passed on now, but for many years, one of my most profound teachers, I asked her how in the world she got to the levels of consciousness that she was manifesting, and she just cracked up. She said, for me, it was jigsaw.
What's that? Hello? Hello, Foster? Oh, I think the phone call got cut. So let me call him back. Just a second. Whoa. You guys, be a little patient. Something's happened, and I cannot come through. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the interview. I'm just gonna try to contact him again and see what's happening, and maybe we can wrap up the interview for today. Let me see. No, he's busy. He's probably still talking and thinking that we are listening. But anyway, we were talking with Foster Gamble. He is one of the precursors or the mentor of the documentary Thrive. So let me see what's happened. I'm going to try one more time. Something happened with the phone connection, and I don't know what that is. So you guys, I'm so sorry. We I don't know what happened. We were just talking, and something happened. Something happened. That's all I can say. Let me try one more time. Whoa, phone is busy. So he's probably talking, thinking that we are live still, but I don't know what happened. That's all I can say. Gee. Anyway, I hope you really got out of something. You got out something out of this interview, that we get all moving the energy. We need to become aware. We need to wake up. If we want change, we cannot change just by putting our hands in our pockets and waiting for things to fall from heaven. We need to be active. And for me, at least from my perspective, one of the most important things we need to do is to become aware of who we are, connect with our inner center, as he mentioned, because from there we're going to have everything much more clear in order for us to understand who we really are. And as I said, we need to become aware and wake up in understanding that we are all one. And not theoretically, because theoretically we all know that we are one, and more so with the technologies that have been shared with us through all these scientists nowadays. So we know that we're all one, but we don't live as knowing that we're all one because we don't have the experience of understanding that. So this idea is on our heads, and that's not good enough. We need to really get into the consciousness that makes us feel in every atom of our being the understanding that we are all one. Let me check and see if he's connected. Hello, there we go. Oh, there he is. What a good deal. Hello, something happened, and I was calling you, but the phone was busy, so I imagined you were still talking, and I don't know what happened, because I was unable to listen to you. Anyway.
I don't know what happened either.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for that cut, but just to wrap it up, so you were saying that any form of meditation or practice that can help people connect with their inner voice is something that we need to start acting upon, right?
Yeah, it's certainly been very important in my life. Various practices for me have been meditation, yoga, self-hypnosis, aikido, sports, biofeedback, all sorts of things at different phases in my life. But I think I was saying that, you know, it can even be jigsaw puzzles or singing or going for regular walks or whatever it is that tunes your organism, because however nice a car you have, you know, if someone gives you a Ferrari, you still got to keep it tuned, or it's not going to run right. And once you've got it tuned with these disciplines, one of the things that it can do for you, then it still matters where you drive it and what you do when you get there. Mm-hmm. But I think that having some sort of practice to keep yourself tuned is really important.
Well, Foster, thank you so much for the time you've given us. I've really enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you through this talk that we've had. And just wish you the best of success with all the work that you've done through the webpage and with Thrive. And it's been great to watch it and see how it's moved people consciousness as it has done with the other documentaries that we've mentioned. And so we need this sort of stimuli coming through work like the one you've done for us to start waking up and realizing, the more stimuli we have, the more we will start realizing that it's time for this change. So from that perspective, I really, really want to thank you for bringing Thrive to us and help stimulate new ideas and possibilities that we are all seeking desperately, and most of us don't even know which way to go. So thank you for that, Foster.
You're entirely welcome, Gloria. Last thing I want to say is that just to let people know that Thrive is available in 10 languages already, including Spanish. And the website is translated into over 100 languages with just a click of a button, so you can have easy access there. And finally, Gloria, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for the great work that you're doing in the world and for giving me the opportunity to get this message out.
Well, thank you, and let me tell you that we're going to hold a screening here, a free screening, once I receive the video, and we'll do it in Spanish, and if I can have access to, other people speaking other languages, we will do that too, and that's a way we will keep supporting the energy movement for waking up. So thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed it and hope we can meet one day and I can do a live interview, because we've had little cuts through the phone, and sometimes it's always better to do it live. And so maybe one day, okay?
I'd love to meet you in person anytime. And where are you located?
I'm in Quito, Ecuador, in South America.
Oh, how great.
Yeah.
I've heard it's beautiful there. I look forward to visiting sometime.
Yes, well, just remember that you have a contact here, and whenever you think about coming or going to the Galapagos Islands, that's where people like to go, I'll be happy to, what is the word? Be your hostess and show you around.
Well, that would be a privilege. I will keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Foster, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So that's it. We finally did it. And anyway, I got a message by Patricio. I'm sorry, Patricio, I was unable to read your message before we were done. But anyway, I get to read it. And anyways, I suggest you guys watch Thrive. It's not the only documentary available that stimulates the waking up of our consciousness. There are many others, and we've posted in our Facebook at Planeta Sin Ego. I'm going to start putting them actually also at the Facebook of Radio Serenidad. But you can search for all these documentaries up in the internet. I mean, they're all over, and they're worth watching because what they do is they're helping us to break free from our conditioning that's limited us to believe that we have to stand these systems and that we have to live by the laws of others. So, oh my God, the phone. I forgot to put the hook on the phone. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for being patient, and I know there were parts that we had cuts in and we were not able to understand clearly some things that Foster said, but hopefully the internet technology will evolve as much as we will evolve in our consciousness, and we'll have better possibility of having new ways of doing the interviews without having to feel that he's over there and I'm over here. We will get to there, but as long as we are in this technology and this reality, that's what I can offer. So thank you very much, you guys, and now I'm gonna leave you with our normal and regular programming for the radio show here, for the Radio Serenidad programs that I really hope that you enjoy. We are a radio program, a radio station that wants to support planetary awareness.